Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back with you. I look around the room and I know just about every face in the room. Having been here many times, I always enjoy coming to the Rotary Club, but I've never had the distinction of introducing your speaker. And this happened because Chris happened to know that I happen to know the speaker for more than a couple of years. And so I said, sure, I'd love to do that. In fact, I have his bio here, and I want you to know that Bobby Stem was born and raised in Oklahoma. He completed his undergraduate work at the University of Central Oklahoma and his law degree at Oklahoma City University. Bobby has worked for 2 Oklahoma governors, a Speaker of the House and a President pro tem of the Senate. He started Capital Gains in 1998, and he's been the executive director of the Association of Oklahoma General Contractors since 2007. Okay. That's the stuff you're supposed to say when you introduce somebody, right? Well, I know a little bit more about this guy. I've known him for almost 30 years. And I want you to know that we've been friends every step of the way the entire time. And in the world of politics, that's a pretty rare thing, isn't it, Trish? A couple of things I want you to know about Bobby. Number one, he's been in this position with the general contractors for all these years. That's a testament to his abilities. He's in a rough spot where there are a lot of people looking at everything you do every day, and he's done it very successfully. What else I want you to know about Bobby is probably 3 things. Number one, he's really smart. Number 2, he works hard. And number 3, his word is good. And when you're in this arena, nothing is more important than those 3 things. Bobby Stem is one of the good guys. It's my privilege to introduce him today.
Is this working all right? You guys, okay, thank you. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I did not know that Mike was going to introduce me. That is just so wonderful. I'm touched by that, Mike. You've been a friend from that very first night on election night when I showed up at your door at 10 o'clock to put out a bunch of signs with Pete Regan. 10 p.m., by the way. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. My name is Bobby Stem. I'm the executive director of the Association of Oklahoma General Contractors, and we're the trade association that represents all the state's road and bridge builders. And we're about 87 years old, made up of about 90 contractors that actually do direct business with the Department of Transportation, and about 150, 160 subcontractors that want to do business with those contractors. And our primary goal is just to get out there and build roads and bridges. So we do that partnering with the Department of Transportation. So I'm really happy that Trent's here with us today, because some of the questions that you might ask me, I'm not going to know. When this project's coming up, or what the anticipated cost of a project might be, or even how you pick projects. Those are things that I can kind of tell communities about as I get out around the state, but I always love it when my district engineer's with me because he really knows the details behind them. I'm kind of calling this, for lack of a better term, an apology 2024 tour. So where I'm just going around the state kind of saying I'm sorry, and there's a reason why. Has anybody here heard of the 8-year plan? Heard of the 8-year plan? Lift your hand if you've heard of the 8-year plan. Okay, that's outstanding. So I know, Mike, you have. You helped us build it.
We did everything I could to get around it.
Yes. And I know Representative Ranson has, because she also supports it. She's a big supporter of infrastructure as well. So the 8-year plan, I'll tell you a little bit about it because it's the most fascinating document I've seen in state government in any state that I've ever been in. When I'm out there and I'm visiting with my colleagues, the other executive directors across the United States, I've never seen an 8-year plan. The interesting thing about an 8-year plan is it's about 20 years old, so it's not 8 years and it's done in 8 years, but it's a rolling 8-year plan. And why it's interesting is I'm going to tell you how it came about. And when I tell you it's the most interesting document that I've seen in state government is because it literally is. You see a lot of plans come out of departments. And they say, what's your plan? Department of Human Services, Department of Education, whatever the case is, all very important departments. But this plan is about 5 or 6 pages of words paragraphs kind of tell you how they got there, and the rest is nothing but an amazing spreadsheet. For every year, for every county, for every month, it tells you the jobs that are going to be let. So an agency is given a tremendous amount of money, and you guys have probably all heard it before. Man, these departments and state government are getting money, and what are they doing with it? What can they show for it? Transparency, accountability, those are key buzzwords. This plan shows where it all goes. And the beautiful part about it is it's transparent and it's accountable. So if we remember days, anybody remember a name Gene Stipe? Thank you. Hey, that's enough needs to be said right there. So Senator Stipe, who had an opportunity to work, when I worked in the Senate from 96 to 98, so I had an opportunity to be in the Senate, not as a member, but as a staff person when Senator Stipe was there. Roads were built different at that time, okay, than they are right now. Right now, special projects, that stuff just doesn't happen like it used to, because if a special project occurs, well then the spreadsheet doesn't work anymore. And when this is developed and it goes to every member of the legislature, you can look per county. In your county alone, you have about 17 jobs in the 8-year plan. Payne County has 17 jobs worth about $135 million. So that means that people that see that count on those developments. So if you're very excited about a particular job that's going to come out in 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden it's not coming out, you might have questions why. You're going to start asking people why. So when you put it out here like this and it's transparent and accountable, you don't have the political posturing with road projects anymore. Secondly, what's great about it is it's all data driven. Okay, so if there's a project in there, there's a reason why it's in there at this point in time. So it went back to the science, went back to the engineering. We're no longer fixing bridges because it happens to be in a powerful political district, but it's because that bridge needs to be fixed next. So let me tell you how it started, and let me tell you where we are right now. I'm going to do it as quick as possible so that we can have any questions. About 20 years ago, 3 things happened that literally said we've got to build roads and bridges in Oklahoma different. A chunk of concrete fell off of a bridge about 20 years ago, went through a lady's windshield, hit her in the face and killed her. She was driving up from Texas. Her name was Yvonne, mid-40s, and it kills her. We literally had bridges that were starting to crumble and fall and kill people. That was very embarrassing. It was very embarrassing to everybody involved. It was difficult for the Department of Transportation because they had limited funds. And as members of the legislature, all of a sudden here you are responsible for a state's infrastructure that's killing people. So that would be, 20 years ago, that was an embarrassing place to be. They immediately told I think it was Director Ridley at the time, what is going on? How do we fix this? So he starts going through this process to where he's going to grade every bridge. I want to find out every bridge that ODOT has, where are we? From 1 to 100, 100 means maybe they just pulled the cones off and it's a brand new bridge and it's great. 1 meaning please don't even walk on the bridge. So I want to make sure that every bridge has a grade. So he's going through that process when what happens is a barge hits the Webbers Falls Bridge. Now that was an impact problem. Okay, that was not, the bridge didn't fall because it was deteriorating, but what happened, what kept Gary Ridley up at night was not the 4.5 months worth of construction to repair that bridge, that main artery of infrastructure. What kept him up at night was all of the interstate traffic that he was having to divert off I-40 that was going through small towns so that people could wind their way back, go over another bridge in another community, and then get back on I-40. But it was those bridges that were slowly but surely just like sinking. You get all this interstate traffic's on all of a sudden. So when I asked Secretary Ridley at one point in time, how were you managing that stressful time? He said, I wasn't worried about the repair of the bridge. That was horrible, it was tragic, but I wasn't worried about the repair of the bridge. I had good contractors out there, they were gonna get that bridge fixed. I was more worried about that small bridge that now had, in one night, 15 to 20 18-wheelers going over it that should have never been going over it. So it was just an additional awareness of how our infrastructure was crumbling. The third thing that happened was the association, our association, said we put about $2 million into a state question to try to raise the gas tax to fix this. That failed 85 to 15. Where do we go now? But the beautiful thing, and you get this, Representative, many of the members were part of that campaign with us. Because last thing you want to do is figure out a way to raise taxes. So the members of the legislature really, really wanted this gas tax. They may not have admitted it, but they really wanted the gas tax to pass because now we could get on a path to fixing the roads and bridges, and then it wouldn't have to come out of another place. But it fails miserably. So because the members of the legislature were part of that campaign with us, they saw that and they said, wow, this is something we've got to fix. So if you knew Gary Ridley, anybody in here know Gary Ridley? Okay, you'll love this. And when you knew Gary Ridley, they say, Mr. Secretary, how are we going to fix this? And he goes, if you knew him, he'd go, He'd blink his eyes a little. And he goes, I think I can do it with $15 million. $15 million. And he goes, yeah, if you'll give me $15 million every year cumulative till I hit 150 million. So this year give me 15, next year give me 30, next year give me 45. So I love this. I love it because what it does is it allows members to return to the district and say, I voted on and helped pass a plan that is eventually going to get us out of this problem. Now, it may take a while, there's no doubt. But this is when people sometimes say, Bob, what is the hardest part of the plan? What is the part of the plan that I should be aware of that maybe not be the most popular part of the plan? Well, the biggest thing is that it's off the top money. So when he said, give me 15, give me 30, give me 45, give me 60 to the point where I hit 150, but that comes off the top. So I want to pretend for a second that I drop 12 to 14 billion dollars on this table. You guys, keep your hands to yourselves. 12 to 14 billion dollars on this table. That means before the legislature begins to start the appropriations process, we come in and we take the road portion off and we pull it over here. That's called off the top money. And so that's a challenge. I mean, think about it. So, Representative, you go to the Capitol and your constituents expect you to go solve every problem, but with half the funds, right? Because some of these funds are coming off the top. So that off the top money is a promise to the department. And in return, the department produces this plan. It's an 8-year plan, and it produces this plan, and it says, we promise to always make all our decisions transparent and accountable where everybody can see it. No more powerful politicians dictating bridge projects. If you have the worst bridge in the state of Oklahoma, but you're a Democrat and you're a freshman, it doesn't matter. That bridge is hauling our citizens across it. It should get fixed first. So it was a promise for a promise. We promise to do what's in the plan if in return you guys promise to fund it off the top. So that plan has been in place for years. What the interesting thing is, after a couple years, remember we said we started with 15? After a couple years, there was so much trust in the plan. The legislature actually said, Secretary, how do we enhance this? How do we accelerate this? You're providing us a plan, and when I look back at over the year, over the last 2 years, or the last 3 years, you're doing what you said you'd do. Check this out. 4,000 people work at the Department of Transportation then. Since then, they have doubled their budget, and they have 2,600 people that work at the Department of Transportation. Typically, when a state agency sees a doubling in their budget, they see a doubling in their people. I understand we're fortunate. If it's a Department of Ed or Health or DHS, they may need more people to accomplish their mission. What happened under Secretary Ridley, he said, I'm going to put money in concrete, asphalt, rebar, and we're going to rebuild this state. So what's happened over that 20 years is the plan continued to grow, and I think when Mary Fallon became governor, she told Secretary Ridley, hey, how do we accelerate this? I want to leave here and not have all these bad bridges. See, when the chunk of concrete went through Yvonne's windshield and killed her, we were 49th in the nation. Now we're number 5 in the nation in bridges. Number 5 in the nation. Like literally, it's probably a year or two away from being the best state in the nation when it comes to our bridge conditions. What do we do now? Because we still have this off the top money. And now it's at a number of 590. Remember I said there was a cap of 190? The legislature and the governors had continued to see how the plan was working and how the department was actually delivering on what they said. So they continued to enhance it in good years. Mary Fallon said, how do I make sure that when I leave office, if I get 8 years, when I leave office, the vast majority of these bad bridges are done? And Ridley says, I just need 15 million. And so that was 15 million on top of the already 15, 30 million he was getting. And then they said, lift my cap up if you don't mind. If you lift my cap to this amount. So the cap was 150, now it's 590. So that means every year at the beginning of session, 590 comes off and goes to the department for these projects. So where are we at right now? People go, well, if you've done the bridges the way you need to, do you still need the 590? The chief engineer at the department, his name's Brian Taylor, he told me this once, because I like visual things. He said, imagine our state transportation system like a connected dots book, coloring book that you see in the dentist's office. He says, that's what we have. We have all these dots of great bridges, but it's the roads in between them that kind of stink at this point in time. So we've got to get through, we've got to start making sure that those roads are better. And right now, I'll tell you personally, a push that I like to see the department having is putting shoulders on 2-lane roads. And if I could blink my eyes, what I'd love is every 2-lane road in this state would have a good wide shoulder on it with rumble strips or whatever the proper things they should be. I'll let the engineer tell me, but when I think rumble strips, I think of my soon-to-be 18-year-old daughter, Annabella. Believe it or not, Mike. There's no doubt she's going to look at her phone. And I like that rumble strip being in that center line so it wakes her up. Lets her put her head back up and say, man, I'm glad I didn't go over that center line. Or the opposite way. If I start to go off onto the side, I like that rumble strip there as well. So a shoulder also means a law enforcement officer can pull you over. Not that you want that to happen, but it's going to every now and then. And they not be in fear of being hurt. Or a family can have a flat tire, get off on the shoulder, change it, and not worry about a semi coming up over the edge and killing them like that has happened in the past. So it's a great plan. That is the best part of this conversation. Here's the bad part. And this is why I'm coming to apologize, because it can't always be on Trent. What's happening across the state is, remember you were looking forward to that, you're right here, my eyesight, somebody let you be my example. You were looking forward to that really great project in 2 years. For whatever reason, maybe it's close to your home, maybe it's close to your business, and you're like, I'm really looking forward when the department gets that. And I've been telling you about this promise. So as I've been telling folks for years and years, maybe even the last time I was here years ago, this is a wonderful plan that's doing more in Oklahoma than anything I've ever seen across the United States. Now I'm telling people we're not able to stick to it. I mean, it's crazy. I've been saying every county, every year, every month, I can go in there and say, June of 2028, here are the 9 projects that they think are going to come out. And so there's a lot to be, these guys work really hard to make that happen. Problem is now is the bids that I'm giving Trent, the bids that my members are giving Trent and the department are higher than the engineer's estimates that are in here because of inflation. I mean, it's just really, we cannot find a new person to get out and work on a road crew for under $19, $20 an hour. And then if we keep them, it's huge. When you've got Arby's paying kids $17 or $18 an hour and saying we'll pay you cash at the end of the day, that's where they're going because it's not near as hot or cold as it is on our job sites. So that's increased about 28 to 29%, just our wages. Fuel's increased 30 to 40. We have, for the department actually, because if you look through here, it's really fast. It's pretty fascinating. You can find it on their website. It says, if you went to if I went to Adair County next year, and I look at it, say something like right of way. And then if you flip a year and go to Adair County, you might see on that particular job, utilities. And then you go a year or two later and you look for that particular job and it'll say the job that's happening, whether it's an overlay or a bridge or something like that. So there's a step. You've got to purchase the right of way, move the utilities, and then you can do the construction. Just your right of way is increasing. So their costs are going up, and what's happening is we're getting about 80% of the plan done. So Representative Ranson might remember this. When we have election cycles, I would go out and I would talk to members and I would kind of brag about how the plan was a set plan. And then now I've got members and other members in the communities, not just members of the legislature, but mayors and stuff, and they said, Bobby, you've always said this plan, we could rely on it. And now they say it's going to be slid 18 months. And so the inflation is just nothing I can really do about it. It's the cost that we're incurring for steel, rebar, asphalt binder, people. It's just been a bear. So I just come to say it's a great plan. If there's communities that are frustrated with something sliding, I hope that those communities would reach out. They can reach out to the industry. I know it's going to be natural to reach out to the department. Problem is I've got Trent sitting here that's going to look at you and say, it's the contractors. These are the bids I'm getting. And so I was like, I'm going to cut. I got to give some of my friends here a little cover and come out and be like, it is us. Everything is just costing us more. And then there's regulations that are coming down from different administrations that end up plaguing us with a tremendous amount of regulatory burden that costs as well. So that's my discussion. I'll take any questions, anything at all. I wanted to make sure that I leave time for questions. I just want to tell you thank you for letting me be here. I love talking about roads and bridges with folks. And Mike, it's really cool to be introduced by my friend Mike Morgan. You're welcome, man.
I'm aware that costs are going up, and you've indicated that you can't seem to find people to work for less than $18 or $20 an hour. How are you able to monitor, or do they monitor, those subcontractors that they do hire that are actually fits in the budget but are using non-legal people to work for them? How do they monitor that? Because I know those crews are out there.
Sure.
You get 2 people that can speak English fluently, but the rest of the crew cannot.
Right.
And I truly believe they're not here legally. How do they monitor that?
On the subcontractors, I'd need to get back with you on that. I don't know. I do know that if you directly contract with the state, like a Sherwood Construction or a Manhattan or whoever it might be, we have to e-verify all of ours, and we have to have the documents saying that we did in all of our certified payrolls. Now, if we hire some guys that does like rebar tying and something like that, I don't know if their contract with us mandates the e-verification either. But if I give you my email, or if I find a way to connect with you after this, I'll go, well, I'd like to, if I'm gonna get it from you now, I'm gonna get it from someone next week. So I'd love to know I'd love to go find the answer. So if you want, I can give you my email address and let's find out. I'll get you that email. I know the direct contractors have to e-verify though.
So I would think that in an 8-year plan, you would automatically build in, whoever's doing the plan, an inflation for each of those years out, because everybody knows the cost is not going to go down. So my question is, are you telling us that that you did initially in the 8-year plan have inflation, an assumed inflation built in, but inflation turned out to be higher than what you planned? Is that what happened?
Yes, sir. Yes. The engineering community, the folks that design the plans, they use certain formulas that help them. I don't know if there's a certain if there's a certain methodology they use or software, but they will build in a certain amount of inflation based on historical patterns. It's just when we have those kind of extreme years, 1 or 2 years, it really starts to skew stuff. And we could have never planned for the fact that about half the people we interview, can't pass a drug test because of our marijuana laws. Yes.
Sorry, I have this. I hear people complain about, oh my gosh, all the roads are under construction. I think that's a great positive thing, right? I love that. But it seems to me now every entrance into Stillwater is going to be a 4-lane. You drive down by Langston and I-33 coming through, and then everything that we've been doing between here and 51 and coming on the east, and that's great. Who makes that decision on how, what's going to become a 4-lane and how important a road is?
If he wasn't here, I'd just make up a good answer, but Trent's here, and he can tell you.
I was really hoping I didn't have to answer anything. So it's all driven, as Bobby said, the 8-year program, those projects are also data-driven. So it's based on safety, based on crashes, based on the volume of traffic that is on there. We have certain standards, volumes, the number of cars that we got. It's all based on data. And we have certain guidelines that we follow that are federal guidelines, guidebooks that say, hey, when you get to this volume, you really need to start looking at that 4-lane. You need to start doing something, maybe it's adding a turn lane is the answer. But it's really, we're taking in all that data that we get, and then as areas continue to grow, or we see areas are starting to grow or have more people building communities in that area, that kind of triggers in my mind that I need to start looking at, is there a chance that this could need to be a 4-lane or have a turn lane in it? So it's all data driven on how we make those decisions. And yes. And I guess I want to touch, Bobby, I want to touch on his a little bit, on the inflation part of it. So when we get our numbers, because we just finished our rebalance process. So every year we go through and rebalance this 8-year work program. And so I look at our district, and my district is the Oklahoma City Metro, all the way up I-35 to Kansas, and the counties on each side of I-35. So that's my entire district that I'm over. And so every year we go and rebalance. And the numbers that we get are, I guess I can say it this way, they're predictions on what we're going to get from the federal government, what we're going to get from the state government. It takes into account what debts we have in. And so we have a projection. We have a projection of a dollar amount. And just like Bobby said, we couldn't project the inflation that actually occurred. We do put that in there, but that projection that we had got with our numbers just wasn't big enough. And these years. And so now we're having to make adjustments, and we're adjusting our projections based on this history of the past few years. Does that help answer that a little bit? Okay. I will just stand here.
So there's been a lot of upset people recently in Norman. I think most of them are upset anyway because they live there. But but obviously it's a little different because it was turnpikes. So kind of talk through that and what could be done differently if the Turnpike Authority or the Highway Department said, hey, Stillwater, we're going to move neighborhoods. What could they have done differently? Because it seems like they were up in arms from day one about turnpikes coming through neighborhoods. So can you address kind of what could be done differently, and how would Stillwater respond positively if you guys did something different?
So I'll speak on the department's behalf, because I'm not going to speak on the OTA's behalf. When we do those types of new alignments, say we're going to bypass Stillwater, and we're going to do a brand new alignment, we have to do a NEPA document. We have to do a big environmental study. We have to go out to the public. We have to have stakeholder meetings. We're engaging the city of Stillwater, major stakeholders. We're engaging the public before we even think about doing it, right? And so, again, I can't speak for the Turnpike, but maybe there should have been more of those conversations ahead of time that, hey, this is what we're planning to do, or this is something that we're looking at, and this is why we are looking at it. Now, to be on the side of the Turnpike a little bit, they built a lot of things that the department couldn't or can't. The perfect example is the John Kilpatrick Turnpike. The department never, when it was built, could have never have afforded to build that, but it was something that the Turnpike could take on based on getting that revenue to be able to build that reliever route that helps some of the congestion on I-40, on I-35. So a lot of these routes, I'm not going to say all the routes, but a lot of those routes that the Turnpike are building are routes that the department just can't wrap their arms around. But again, I think when we go do projects like that, or even with the one you brought up, 6th Street, we're engaging, we're working with the city, we're working with the city council, working with the staff, we're engaging on things that are important to that community. And so I would say that's the biggest thing, is make sure that you're involved and engaged in those types of projects. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. I'd second that.
I have a question over here. So curious about, you said that you revisit it every year. How flexible is the 8-year plan? Seeing as I'm assuming that when it was created, that Broken Bow was not as big of an attraction as it is now.
Correct.
And there's been a huge need in widening roads to get in and out of Broken Bow. So how flexible is the 8-year plan?
I would say that it's pretty flexible. I'm going to use pretty flexible, because as Bobby mentioned, there's several steps to get to that construction piece, right? And so sometimes we have difficulty purchasing right away. Sometimes we have difficulty trying to figure out where we can move utilities. So that's where I would say the flexibility is in there, is how far along the progress is made in the project. And so there is that opportunity when you have a Broken Bow or a Hochatown that has just, has blown up over the past few years. Yes, that has become a priority for that district, and I can say that because I used to work down there. But they can end up having to shuffle other things, and so for me, like, I'm gonna go look at and see how far we've progressed on certain projects, and if maybe that progress hasn't quite got to where it shows to be in that right year, like we're nowhere close to moving utilities or buying right of way, then that's an opportunity to move that project up. And so it's flexible, but it's also dependent on where the status of the project, how long in design it is, and some other things that have helped us keep projects where they are and helped move projects forward. And Hochatown's a good example, is the legislature giving us that retro funding, the Rural Economic Transportation.
I was impressed so far.
I'm sorry, I do not know the rest of
retro.
it. I'm sorry, I don't know the rest of it. But that retro funding, that additional $200 million that was given to the department, allows us to go after those types of projects in Hochatown to say, hey, this has become a priority. We need to get some money out there to get that done. Another example of a retro project for our district is Kingfisher. east of Kingfisher on State Highway 33. We got 2 shoulder widening projects on there. And so that additional $200 million, when there was that inflation that we were having to try to figure out, are we going to have to slide this project, move it up? It kept those projects where they were. They didn't move. They didn't have to slide because we got that additional funding. So when we get that type of additional funding from the legislature, we're going to put it to where that need is, like a Ho Chi Town. And those are specifically, that retro funding is specifically for those rural communities that have that big substantial growth like in Ho Chi Town.
This is just a point of clarification. In 2007, a House bill was passed in Oklahoma requiring subcontractors and contractors trying to get a contract with the state of Oklahoma to use E-Verify. Subcontractor and contractors have to go through E-Verify,
Yes.
or they cannot get the contract.
Awesome. Now I don't have to do that homework.
Because we have to go in there as part of our administration of the contract, especially when there's federal dollars or even state dollars. We have to verify everything. I mean, they go interview these employees out in the field. So we do have to verify that information, just like he said.
So guessing that the cost of concrete, et cetera, is not going to go down, and the cost of labor and all of those things, what are the thoughts about making up that shortfall to get things back to where they were?
This is why I'm very glad that Representative Ranson is in the room with us today. Mike knows what's coming. You know, we're going to have to go back and visit with the members of the legislature and see about expanding that cap, that 590 cap that we have. Either we have to slide projects, or we're going to have to increase that cap. And so I think the key for us right now is, what should the new cap look like? And I really felt like the way that Ridley did it, instead of just jumping, let's say the cap needs to be 750, or let's say it needs to be $1 billion. Then I say we just incrementally get there. You know, we're at 590, maybe we get there 30 million at a time until we get there. So within 10 or 15 years, it kind of keeps us steady with inflation, and that new cap is set 15 years from now. But that's right now. I'm in a brainstorming mode. You know, first it really worked back then with Secretary Ridley, because he said, here's the problem that we have, and it's the bridges, and I believe that it costs this much, and if we do it this way, we get there. And so the department has really proven to be pretty good stewards of those dollars, and also not playing politics with the projects. So if we still have the confidence with the legislature, and we go back and we say, based on inflation and then based on these additional needs. And so right now I think an emphasis there is the 2-lane roads, the shoulders, making sure that every 2-lane highway in the state of Oklahoma has a shoulder. You kind of tell them what you're wanting and then how we get there, and we'll probably be making those asks here in the next couple of years of how we do that. And we'll brainstorm with the members of the legislature, see how they feel like we could best get there. But I can tell you right now, and from Mike's support of the program to Representative Ranson's support of the program, as long as we keep doing what's in the 8-year plan and keeping politics out of it, we've really enjoyed some great success over the last two decades, really, sir.
And I can tell you from my perspective, when I go and rebalance again this year, I didn't get to add any projects. I got to update my estimates, and I got to try to make them work in the years that they did. So what I'm having to do is not add projects, but go back and make sure I have the most accurate estimate that I can get in that program, so it stays on track. And so from the departments, that's how I'm having to look at that. So now, would extra money be nice? Yeah, but that's where we're at. I'm sorry.
Well, speaking of 2-lane roads with no shoulder, and I think it's a highly traveled road, is western to 33 from Stillwater. Is that a retro, or is that part of the 8-year?
So glad you're here.
That would be the county. And so the county has their own program, very similar to the 8-year work program. That's called the CIRB program. And it's a 4 or 5-year program. And so they have the same thing of, here's the projects that we plan to do with the state funding that they get, or any other funding that they get. So they have their own program that they are saying, hey, these are the projects that we're doing. But that's a county road, so I kind of I can't talk about that.
The road off of 51 going north to Perry. Is that 96?
86 is a state highway, so that would be me. Yep, that would be so
Because it's got shoulders and it's 65 miles an hour.
it most of it doesn't have shoulders. It does not have shoulders. Yeah, it has. So that is in the 8-year work program to start looking at that project to try to determine, because there's also a lot of hills and sags that they're out of date, right? And so those are things that we've got to try to figure out of how we can improve that, how much it's going to cost, how many projects it's going to take, because what we end up having to do, especially down in the urban area where we're building these big, huge interchanges, is we bust them up into 4 or 5 different projects that take 10 plus years to finally build a full interchange just because it costs so much money. You talk about a rural 2-lane road like that where there's a lot of hills that need to be adjusted. That's going to be a lot of money, and trying to figure out, okay, which phase do we do first, how many phases it's going to take. But yeah, so.
So last question. She's got a question over here. Do you have a question?
Here you go. I'll jump in here while we're thinking about it. So, talk just a little bit about, I'm going to use Highway 51. Here locally we call it 6th Street, but Highway 51 through Stillwater. Can you give us a little bit of the thinking that's gone on to that versus, say, a bypass around the city as opposed to through the city, and what are the now I know you can't speak for the city, but it is a highway. So help us understand what's going on in that whole discussion over the years.
Yeah. So the discussion has been, currently it's a 4-lane, there's no turn lane in it, right? And so when you go look at the crash data and the crash history, you see a lot of rear ends, you see a lot of angle turning collisions, and so when we start looking at that data, we're like, okay, let's try to get a turn lane through, and that's been the conversation, to get a left a left turn lane through there, and so we can get those people that are stopped out in the middle of the through lanes, get them into a safe storage area, so people that are traveling 51 can still get through 51 without having to be disrupted by the turning traffic. So those have kind of been those conversations of what we're looking to do on 6th Street is try to get that turning movement, turning traffic out of there. I don't know, and I would have to ask my predecessors on a bypass. Usually when you say you're going to bypass a town, it does not go well. Yeah. And so, the
So the problem is not through traffic so much as it is local traffic, is that?
correct. Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. That's what we're trying to remedy is the local traffic with the turning and stuff. And not just traffic, but pedestrians and bicycles and everything like that. We're trying to account for that movement through on 6th Street.
All right, so y'all paid for one meal today and got 2 speakers. How about that? So, thank you.